What's going on, fellow developers? My name is TYLERP, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this Laravel to-do application where we're going to be able to add and delete to-dos straight to a database. The database is going to be MySQL, and obviously we're going to be building this in Laravel. What you can do in this, as you can see, I'm going to show you, is we can create new to-dos. So a new to-do could be teach Laravel. Hit create, and what it's going to do is create a new entry into our database, a new to-do in our database, and then also we can delete some off. So once we complete one, like tell the viewers to like and subscribe. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe this video if you enjoy it. Now if I hit delete, there you go, that's been done, ticked off and deleted. We then have learn to create a to-do app in Laravel. Well, I think I've managed to do that, so I can also tick off that one. Now I've got one more on my list, which is to teach Laravel. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Before you continue with this video, you're going to need some sort of MySQL database to connect to. You can download a MAMP, which will have MySQL built in, and then just run the MAMP server. Like I have. Here you go, you can see it right here, this MAMP. I just click start, it's a free application, and you can go download it now. Another thing you're going to need to have installed is the composer. So without further ado, let's get started. Today's video is brought to you by Cloudways, a managed cloud hosting platform for your PHP-based applications. Cloudways offers peace of mind and flexibility to let you focus on growing your business and reach new milestones. Now with Cloudways, you get an optimized stack, managed server and application backups, staging websites, integrated Git and Composer, and the choice of 5 cloud providers like AWS, DigitalOcean, Linode, and more. So if you're an agency or an e-commerce business and looking for a managed solution, then go for Cloudways without wasting a moment. You can use the promo code TYLERP when signing up via the link in the description to get $15 free hosting credit. And by the way, I really like their slogan, moving dreams forward. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project using Composer and Laravel. So what we're going to do here is say Composer. We're then going to say create project, and then we're going to tell it to use Laravel. Once we've said that, we can give it a project name. So this one is going to be Laravel First YouTube. Hit enter, and that's going to create our Laravel project. That only took a few seconds to complete, and now you can see down here it has completed. So the next thing we need to do is actually cd into that package. So I'm going to cd into Laravel First YouTube. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to clear this. And the next thing I'm going to do is run npm install. It's going to install the node dependencies, what we're going to need to actually do development. While that's loading, we're going to go over to tailwindcss. And we're going to install that. Let's zoom out. Oh, apparently we're already zoomed out. We're going to click Get Started, Installation on the left, and then click the Laravel button here. Now, once we're here, we can scroll down, and as you can see, we get this Install Tailwind via npm, which we're going to need. So let's copy all of this. Copy, come back here, paste this in, and hit Enter. Now, that's going to run and install the post CSS, Tailwind CSS, and auto prefixer for us. We then could create a config if we want to modify this, but I'm not going to do that for this video. I'm then going to go down, and I'm also going to copy this required CSS, Tailwind CSS here. So let's copy that, go back here, and now I'm going to open this up with VS Code. So I'm going to write code dot, and here you go, we have VS Code open. So I'm going to close this, and on the left here, I need to go into the webpack.mix.js, and this is where we're going to add in here, say require, and I'm going to say Tailwind CSS, just like that. Hit save, and that is now done. Tailwind CSS is now built into our post CSS config. So let's go up to our resources folder. As you can see, it says resources CSS app.css, and it will be compiled with Tailwind. So what we're going to do is go in CSS app.css, and we're going to add in the 3 lines here, Tailwind base components and utilities. Copy that, come back to this, and hit paste. We're going to hit save. I'm going to zoom in one as well. And there you go. That's now done. Once that has been done, we can head into our terminal again, right here. And I'm just going to clear the screen so it's a bit neater. And I'm going to type npm run dev. And what this is going to do is going to compile our JavaScript and our CSS with the setup we have here. As you can see, it's compiled both. And there you go. Now we have all our dependencies installed and ready. So the next thing we need to do is set up our MySQL. So I'm using MAMP for this. If you can use any MySQL database you want, you just need to make sure you have something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to type in localhost /php myadmin. Hit enter, and it's going to open up PHP myadmin. I zoom out of this a little. The next thing we're going to do is create a new database, and we're going to call this Laravel to-do YouTube. I'm going to hit create, and there you go. We now have Laravel to-do YouTube. It's put it in a folder because I already have one called Laravel to-do. But here you go. So we have this here. Now we don't need to create anything here because we're going to get Laravel to do that for us. So the next step is to go back into our Webpack, into our VS Code. We're going to go down to our .env file, and we're going to update our database connection stuff here. So as you can see, we have the database, which is going to be Laravel _to-do _YouTube. The username is root, but the password is also root for MAMP. And as you can see, it's using the database port, which is 3306, and the local host or home IP address right there. And obviously the connection is MySQL for us. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm just going to hit close, and that's now set up. So now our Laravel application will connect to our setup. So what we're going to do next, I'm going to press Control-Option-T. And down here, I'm going to run a PHP artisan model. Now we need to create a to-do model. Models in Laravel basically define how your database should work. You can also create controllers and migrations, which we'll go over in a moment. So first thing we're going to do is run PHP artisan. Now PHP artisan is just a massive list of commands. As you can see, if I press paste, you've got loads of things here. Now the ones we're going to be focusing on is the migrate and also the make model here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear, and we'll go create a new to-do model. So what we're going to say is PHP artisan. We're then going to say make, and then we're going to do a colon, and we're going to say model. But then at the same time as creating the model, we're also going to we're going to call this model to do, by the way. We're then going to use a hyphen and say MCR. Now this stands for migrations, components, and resources. So we're going to create 3 extra files as well as this at the same time. So let's hit enter, and what it's going to do is going to create the model created successfully, created the migration. As you can see, the migration is called this, and then it's created the controller as well. So let's hit clear, and then what we can do is PHP, oh that's not PHP, PHP artisan serve. Hit enter, and that's going to run a development site. Now we can open this up, and as you can see, we get the boilerplate Laravel application. We can now go over to our model, which will be in our app, models, and to do. You can see this is what has been created. Now we only have to set up a singular piece of code here. It's going to be a protected, fillable, and it's going to be equal to an array. And inside this array, we're going to have our table structure. So our model is going to take in a title. So our to-dos are going to have a title, and that's actually it. But you could also have, let's say if they had a description as well, you could add a description. If they had a user ID attached to them, you could add all of this in here. But for now, we only need the title. So there you go, we've got our protected title. So that's that part done. This whole file is now complete. I know it's very small, not much to go in here, but that's all this says is these are the areas we're going to be filling. So let's close that. Let's shut the models down, and let's open the HTTP. We're going to open the controllers, and you can see we have a to-do controller, which was also generated. So let's open this up, and in here, we're actually going to have a few things. So as you can see, there is a lot of things in here. Now, I'm not going to overwhelm you with all this stuff. We're not going to look up pretty much any of this just yet, but I'm just going to delete it all so you know it's there and ready. So we're not going to do anything there, but just this is where we're going to do all of our functionality for the to-do application. So let's leave that blank for now, and let's now go down to our database, migrations, and if you remember, we created a migration called to-dos table. So Let's shrink this. And here you go. So this is going to create our to-dos table inside of our database. You can see here it's got a few different things. So what's happening here? Every single migration has two different things. It has an up, which is what you're trying to run, and then a down in case you need to drop it or remove it. So basically this will reverse the migrations. This will run the migrations. Migrations allow you to basically keep your databases consistent between different environments, such as if you're upgrading to a live server, you can just run a migration once and it will basically build all the tables and databases you need for this application. As you can see here, we've got a to-do. So this is going to create a table called to-dos with a blueprint of table. And we're going to start off by creating a unique ID for every single entry that goes into our to-do. We're then going to add another table here. And this one is going to be a string. So we're going to type in here string. And now we need to pass through the string name, which is going to be title. So this will create a string of title for our database. We're then going to have another table, and this one could be a Boolean, for instance, which could be called done, which would be our completed state, or we could have a table with a string of description or whatever else. But for now, again, we just have a title we're saving. So we're going to save the ID, a string, which is going to be called title. And then we're also going to have a timestamp. Now the timestamps just creates a created at and modified at. So every time we change it, the modified at will be changed or updated at. I'm not sure which way around it is. And then the created at will also be created when we first run this here, or when we first create a to-do, sorry. And then all the down does is it's going to drop the whole table if we want to remove it. So you can do PHP artisan, migrate reverse, I think, or something like that. It's in the list of commands. Let's just bring these up. I don't like it when they're down there. I know most programmers do. I don't. I like it like this. So there you go. So that's our table set up. Now to run this, what we need to do is open up our terminal. So I'm going to press Control Option T. And inside of here, let's turn off our serve quickly. And we're going to run PHP artisan quickly. And now if we just raise this up, you can see there's a bunch of different commands here. Now what we need to do is run migrate, but not migrate fresh or install. We're just going to run a shorthand one, which is going to be PHP artisan migrate. I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to migrate all the tables. Now you might see that this just says that, but what it's actually done, if we go back to our PHP my admin and we refresh, you can see when we go into Laravel to do, you can see we now have a bunch of different things. We have migrations, passwords, failed jobs, users, which were all created by default. So you can see we have a bunch of migrations in here for users, passwords, failed jobs, and then migrations is done. So the actual migrations table is obviously what we've just done. And then we have our to-dos, which is the table we create. So if we click on structure, we can see it's got an ID, a title, a created at, and an updated at timestamps. And there you go. So that is the basics of creating a migration with this. So now what we need to do is actually get our functionality working. So let's click it back into our VS Code to bring that down. We don't need migrations anymore, so we're just going to close the database section. We're going to close these as well. So what we need to do next is open up our terminal. Let's clear this, and we need to run PHP artisan surf again to get our server running. Let's just close the terminal after that, and let's actually shrink this down and see if we can fill them side by side. So let's get this, and there you go, we've got them side by side. So let's also close that sidebar for now. So in the controller, the to-do controller, we actually need to set up a public function called index. Now the index is responsible for displaying whatever the resource we're looking at, and the resource is the to-do. So we're gonna set up something called the to-dos. Sorry, we're gonna set up something called the return, and we're gonna return a view. Now the view we're gonna return is index. Now we're gonna set this view up in a moment, but first, we're actually gonna set it up now. So we've got this index return. We now need to go into our close the database. We need to go into our resources, go down to our views, and we're going to delete the welcome.blade. We're then going to set up a new folder called layouts, and this is where we're going to host our layouts file. So we're going to create a new file, and this is going to be called default.blade.php. Now Blade is just Laravel's templating engine, And what we're going to write in here is we're going to do the exclamation mark tab. And as you can see, it's going to pre-fill out a few things. Let's zoom in one. And up here, we're going to call this Laravel to-dos. We're then going to link in our assets or an asset here. So we're going to use the templating strings. We're then going to put in here asset. And the asset we want to load is our CSS app.css. And that should be that. That should load that in correctly. So we should now have some new styling here. So if we refresh, oh, welcome's not found. So sorry, we have to set that up first. So let's actually just put in here test or at yield test or content. And let's go back to our files here. And in our fuse folder this time, we're going to create an index.blade.php, which is going to be our main file. In there, we're going to say this extends. And what this extends are layouts folder.default file. We're then going to get the section, which needs to correlate to the yields we did inside of our default. And we're going to say content. And we're going to say end section. And inside here, we can just say test. Hit save. And we need to go into our roots, our web, and we can change this to be index. Hit save. Refresh. And there you go. We get test. But we're not wanting to display our index via this. We want to use the controller index we set up. So to do that, we need to go into web. We need to, first, we need to use our app /http /controllers / and then we need to call the to-do controller. Now this is going to basically pull our controller namespace into this file, which means we can then delete what's in here. And instead of running a function, we're going to actually get the to-do controller and we're going to directly call the class. And we want to get the index function from inside of our class name. So inside to-do controller, we have this index function name, which is the one we want to use. Then once we have that, we need to give this a name. This is just the name for the actual reference. And the name of this is going to be to-dos or to-do. Hit save, refresh, and as you can see, nothing changes because it just works the exact same. So there you go. So we've got this route all set up already and ready to go. So let's actually style this out and make it look how we want it. So in our index or in our default.blade, we're going to set up a header. So let's set up a header. In the header, we're going to have a div with the class of container, MX auto, and the padding of 4. These are all Tailwind classes, by the way. If you've not used Tailwind before, I recommend you go check it out. It's really awesome and makes wireframing and setting stuff up really quick. So we're going to do a H1 with the text bold, text center, hit enter, and in here we're just going to say Laravel to-dos, hit save, refresh, and there you go. We've got Laravel to-dos title at the top here. We're then going to go around our yield and add a main just for to keep it tidy, make sure it's wrapped in sync. And we're also going to give our body a background of gray 100, so a really subtle gray. And there you go. That's all we need to do for our default.blade. So let's delete that. Let's go into our index.blade, and this is where we're going to set up a few sections. So the first section we're going to set up has a class of MB6. It's going to be a max width screen MD and MX auto. Please do a .mx auto. And then in here, we're going to have a form. And this form is going to have an action, which is going to be a URL, which is going to be /to-do. So we're going to actually post. So we're going to create a method. It's going to be equal to post to the to-do /, which is going to be the actual route we're going to be setting up soon. So inside of here, we need to basically do a CSRF. What this basically does is basically it makes it so we have cross cross-reference something support, cross-support reference. It's something like that, but basically it lets our form work cross origin. We're then going to create a div with flex, justify, center, a shadow and rounded. It's also going to have inside of it an input of type text with the class of width full, rounded left, pix padding 4, padding y 2, and outline of none. And there you go. And in the name, we're going to call this title. So this is what we're actually going to pass through. Now, this title needs to match our models. So in our app and our models, it needs to match our title we set in the fillable. Here, let's go back. And there you go. So that's that set. Let's zoom out one just so we can see it a bit better there. Then we're going to create a submit with the class of background purple 500, padding x, padding y2, rounded right, text white, and there you go. And the value will be called create. Hit save, let's refresh, and there you go. That's looking nice. Let's actually add some padding around the edge here. So let's just say padding. You know what, let's go into our default.blade and let's just add a class of padding for around the edges too. And there you go, that's now sitting in line. Let's close that and back here. So now we've got the first section done. We want a new section, which is going to have a div with the max width screen MD MX auto again to center our content. We're then going to have a to do, which is going to be called background white, P4, rounded XL, shadow, MB3, and we're going to have it as a flex.justify between. Now, we may be going quite fast to this styling, but we just want to basically get a good looking base down. So we're then going to have a div with the class of title, and in there we're just going to say to do test, hit save, refresh, there we go. So now we've got our to do displaying. Now we can copy this multiple times, and there you go, we would have 3 to dos, but we also need some actions in here. So we're going to actually create a form, which is just going to have inside of it another CSRF. We're going to actually have a method, and I'll explain this when we get to it, which is going to be called delete. This basically just spoofs the actual method. So we're going to use a post type, but then we're going to tell Laravel that we're actually using a delete method. And then we're going to have a button of type submit, which will have a class of text red 500, which will just say delete. Hit save, refresh, and there you go. So this is the styling and the actual form of the app completed. So now what we need to do is actually allow us to add to our database. So as you can see here, we have this form which has an action to the /to-do of type post. So we actually need to set this up. But first, in our to-do controller, we need to create a new function called a store. And the store, so let's say public function store, this takes a request called request, and the request basically holds all the post information which we send via our form. And in this, we can actually check if stuff is valid. So we can say this.validate, and we can say the request, but we can check for specific things. So in here, we can check for the title. We got to check if the title, and we're going to make sure it's required. All this just is basically say, if we don't pass a title, pass back an error. So let's go set this up and see what's happened here. So let's also dd request. Now what dd does is basically just prints out on screen whatever we post inside of here. So we're just going to print out the request. So let's go back to our index.blade, our web, And what we want to do is create a new route. So we want to create a route of type post, because we're going to be posting here, and the route we're going to be posting to is to do. So inside of our action, you can see we did a URL of to do. We could also do a route of to do, and then this will have the method of post. So if we go back here, we can then also do the to do controller, and we're going to say class again. And then what we're going to say here is store. So what this basically does, it's going to do the exact same thing. So when we post a request to our store, it's going to, or when we do a post request to /to do, it's going to access our controller and call the store function we have inside of here. And it's going to pass the post request into our parameters. So what we're going to do here is if we hit create, you're going to see we're getting an error. So the issue we're actually having here is actually to do with us changing this to root. Now, if we put this at URL, save and refresh the page, you can see if we hit create, nothing happens this time. It doesn't throw an error. But if we change this to root, hit save and do this, it's going to say there's an error because we don't actually have a name for this. All we're actually doing is passing through root. So we need to actually change this to URL. Oh, sorry, we don't want to resubmit that form. And creates. Actually, when we hit create, nothing happens because we're not actually doing anything yet. We're actually going to be getting an error, which is passed through the validation because we're not passing through our title here. But if we actually pass through a title, let's say test and hit create, you can see we get the request. So you can see everything that's passed through, the headers and everything like that. Also the methods, the request URI and everything else we get through. So if we go back, now we can actually validate our to do. So if there's no title, we actually will be passed back something. We can't actually see it here. So to get it, let's go inside of our index.blade, and underneath this div, we're going to create an @error, and we're going to give this error a name. Now the error is title, because if we go to our to do control, you can see our validate is called title. So if we go back, we can say @title. We can then say end error. So basically what we're doing here, this is like an if zone. We're saying if there's an error called title, we're going to run this here. So we're going to say paragraph, and we're going to say please enter a value. Let's give this a class, and let's just say text red 500 mt3. So let's refresh, let's hit create, and as you can see it says please enter a value because we've not actually entered anything, which is great. So validation is now working. We can also do this in line with our CSS here. So if we put @error and then @end error, inside of here we could pass a class. So for example, border red 500, hit save, refresh. Now if we do another error, you can see we get a red line around our input forms here. And that's how you can run error validation checking, which is pretty useful and really cool. So what do we do now we've got this thing? So we can pass through test here, and if we go through and we just say request hyphen title, hit save, and we now pass this through, you can see we get test, which is great. That means we can pass through a request, but that's not saving it to the database. Well, because we've already set up our model, it's actually really simple to put stuff to the database. The first thing we need to do is actually import our models up here, or make sure it is imported, which you can see it is, models to do. And then down here we can just say a to do is equal to a new to do, and then we're going to say to do hyphen title is equal to request hyphen title, and that's all we need to do. We then can do a to do save, which will save it to the database. And then we want to return a back function. Now the back function will take us back to the requested URI. Now if we hit save and let's go back, let's refresh this page. And in here, I'm just going to say my first to do. I'm going to hit create. Nothing happens, but we don't get any errors. So if we go to our database here, let's just make this full screen quickly. And we go to our browse, you can see we have an entry with the ID of one called my first to do, created at the time we did it. Yes, I know it's 1 in the morning, please don't judge me. And there you go. So that's entering our first to do to our table or our database. So let's go back to our app here. Now, how do we display that? So now we can save new to dos, but how do we display it? So to display it, we actually need to go into our index function here. And we actually need to get our to-do. So to do that, we need to-dos. We can say it's equal to our to-do model. And we can use a function called get. And that is it. That's going to pass all our to-dos into this array. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass through a parameter down into our index or into our file. And we're going to pass through an array. We're going to pass through to-dos. And we're going to set this equal to to-dos. Hit save, and now if we go back to our index and where we're listing out our to-dos, let's just above this quickly write the strings and just type in to-dos, hit save, refresh, and there you can see we get an array of our to-dos. So if we add a second one, we can say my second to-do, hit create. You can see we now get two in there. That we've got one with the title of my second to-do and the first to-do as well. So what we want to do is we actually want to loop through these to-dos and print a to-do item for every single one. To do that, we can use the blade template where we can see for each, and oh, that messed up, and an end for each. And now we need to move this inside of here, our to-do item, and this is going to be our collection, which is our to-dos, and the item will be a to-do. And then in our title we can say dollar to-do hyphen title, not hyphen, sorry, arrow function to-do, refresh, and there you can see all our to-dos are appearing here. So if we add another to-do, hello YouTube, create, you can see it gets added to the end of our to-do list. Now the last thing we need to do is set up our delete method, because if we click this, it's going to do nothing. As you can see, it's just throwing in our token, I think, which is generated by the CSRF and the method delete, which isn't what we want right now. What we want is to actually call a function. So let's go into our to-do controller. Now inside of our to-do controller, we need to create another item in here, and it's going to be a public function, and we're going to call it destroy. We're then going to pass through a to-do with $to-do. And that's going to be the to-do we need to pass through. So we're going to, every time we click delete, we're actually going to pass through this to-do to this function. We're then going to say to-do hyphen delete. And then we're going to return back like we did before. And that is all we need to do to delete our function. We then need to obviously go to our web and set up a root for this. So inside of our web, we'll just say root $delete. And we're going to pass through our /to-do /, and now we need to actually pass through some curly braces, and inside there we need to pass through our to-do. Now this needs to match the name of what we're passing through here, I believe, and also we need to go into here and pass through our to-do controller class, and we're going to call destroy. But while we're doing that, we need to give this another name which matches our function here. So it's going to be to-do.destroy, and hit save. Now if we go back to our index.blade, where we've got our form here, we can add an action, and this action will be a root action this time, and we're going to say to-do.destroy. This needs to match our name we pass through, so to-do.destroy. And then we need to pass through our to-do item we get from the for each. Now once we have that, we need to do a method of post. Now we can't do a method of delete because it will throw an error. That's why we're using the method spoofing here, which will make it fire or send through a hidden field with the delete methods passed through. Now if we come back here, refresh, let's just add in another one, delete me. Create. Now if we just click delete, we get an error. Delete method is not supported for this root. So this is what I was talking about. So after a lot of debugging, I realized I made a mistake of calling the action wrong, and it wasn't actually going to any root, it was posting to this root. So some of you may have noticed this, but I also made another mistake. I accidentally took this outside, or did put the destroy function outside of the array, which is wrong. We need to pass that in the array. So now if we go back and we try this one last time, you can see it now deletes it. And if we go to our database and let's full screen this and refresh, you can see we get all our to-dos here. If we go back to our to-do app and we delete, let's say, our first to-do, it's unused, we completed it, go back, refresh, you can see our first to-do was deleted in the database as well. Now this is all we needed to do to complete our to-do application. Now, I'm sorry if this is a bit fast or a bit slow. Please let me know what you guys think of this tutorial in the comment section below. But I hope you have learned some new things about Laravel. I hope you can take something away from this and build your own applications from this, a CRUD application where you can delete, update, add new things. Maybe take this one step further and actually add an update function, so you can click update, update this to do, and then save the new to do in the database. And then let me know how you get on with that on Twitter. My Twitter handle is down below in the comment section below. And also, don't forget to check out our Cloudways sponsor for this video. A massive thank you to them for sponsoring this video. You can use the code TYLERP in the description to get $15 free hosted credit. So don't forget, don't miss out on this opportunity. Go in the description below, click on that Cloudways link and enter in, when you sign up, enter in the code TYLERP to host your Laravel applications. Okay guys, so if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that thumbs up button, press the subscribe button, share with all your friends, leave any questions or feedback in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and peace out.